Okay, this is the handout that I included to remind you of some things that most of you probably know. A profile draft is any draft. All drafts can be profile drafts if you have enough shafts or if you want them. And float length doesn't matter. So if you have some design that the float length is really long and you really love the design, you can always use it as a profile. Many of the profile drafts that we end up using are twill based because there's so many twill drafts. And another way that we often design profile drafts is with a motif. So we draw a heart or a tree or a turkey this time of year, whatever, a pumpkin. And then if we have a knowledge of unit weave structures, we can substitute those into a profile draft and make it a thread by thread draft. We're going to talk specifically today about the laces, but there are a lot of other profile drafts like crackle and rep weave, thick and thin, summer and winter double weave, colonial double weave. All of those are on 4 shafts, and then of course they extend to 8 and 16 and any more you want. And some ones that we pick up: rep weave, thick and thin, summer and winter double weave. So some of those go into more shafts and they can translate very well. So if we start with a 2-block profile, this is a skewed checkerboard. It has 21 blocks, and weft is the color in this instance, but it really doesn't matter which way you do it. So if you were substituting in different things, if you substituted in 4 threads, like maybe a summer and winter threading, you'd have 84 threads. If you substituted in, say, a 6-thread unit, which is one example is Atwater Bronson lace with a 5-thread float, that'd be 126 ends. And if you did Atwater Bronson lace with a 7-thread float, you could have 168 ends. So how big it is depends upon what you substitute. Madeline Vanderhoot, in her complete book of drafting, goes through and shows you how it creates lace in each block or in both blocks, or with the lace weaves. For most of them, we can have plain weave without having to get more shafts on our loom. And we can do things with that. So here's a 2-block Atwater Bronson in that profile draft. I notice all of the floats are in purple, so this one's a weft float. I mean, here's a Atwater Bronson plain weave can be added, and there's some things that are looking kind of funny because it's too small. I need to make that one bigger. Huck lace, you can have weft floats, warp floats, or plain weave. So you have 3 choices for each half block. Some of the things you can do with huck, you can weave all lace. So you have warp and weft floats, and it really opens up. Traditional huck toweling had warp floats. It's the side you did huck embroidery on. And huck lace uses half units, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So what are we going to do? Okay. This is weave point. And I picked this to show you because it does blocks in a very different way. And it actually has 2 choices. So you could do them like everybody else, or you can go to transform and translate. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, I think this is for a warp drawdown. If in the warp you have dark blocks on here, and in the weft you have white blocks, you get to tell it what you want those blocks to do thread by thread. But first you have to decide what size your unit is. So if we wanted to set to put in Atwater Bronson lace, we might have a 6-thread block and a 6-pit block. And so we could tell it that. And then we can put in the drawdown. And I'm going to start with plain weave. And then like, okay, so one. So this one would float. And then we get a plain weave wet pick. And this one would float. And we get the plain weave around it. And I probably got it backwards. And for this one, we want plain weave, and I'll probably do it backwards, but let's try it. I think it goes that way. Now I may have two plain weaves together. So with this method, you can really do anything you want, any two faces. But as you see, I'm struggling with whether this should be the plain weave square or whether it should be the reverse. So now if I say okay, and it substitutes in, I did reasonably well. Except I've got all warp floats instead of, warp floats instead of wet floats. Let's make this smaller. So this one is this is a Windows only, and Bjorn has two ways to do this, or you can set up blocks to substitute in. So this one really has user controlled blocks, so you can do what you want. And if we change the face on this, let's see, transform. I never remember where things are. Change face. Then we're back to our weft floats, which I think are easier to read. Because I can see I've done two, and I'm ready to just do to fix the plain weave and go back to floats in the next block. Okay, so that's one way to substitute. And that may actually be a little harder, but at least gives you the option of doing everything. Okay, I started with this little 3-block profile. And this is Fiberworks. And I learned something new today because I hadn't done it before. If I go back to this after I've done one, it'll still look like this on the screen, like the profile. But when I substitute it in, it substitutes it into the last one I did. So the draft keeps getting bigger. That's kind of a problem because it isn't what it says it is. And when I save this file, it saves it as the bigger file with the block substitution made. So that did kind of foul me up a little because I always used to save them before because it didn't continue to show that. Anyway, you can do Huck lace or Atwater Bronson, or here's Swedish lace. And Ingrid Bosell, who was the weaver in this group and an excellent for the Fiberworks program and an excellent weave structure person. There are about 5 or 6 choices for the laces. So you ought to try all of your lace choices and see what the different ones do. The other thing you can do with laces is the lace can be pattern or the plain weave can be pattern. So you can do a lace overall and then have the plain weave be pattern, or the plain weave can be your background. What do you need to do to add plain weave to the selvages or plain weave anywhere in the draft you want? Or either Atwater, Bronson, or Huck. We just want to do 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
1, 2.
Right.
For Atwater Bronson, we want to do an even number of threads, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, whatever we want. For Huck lace, we want to do an odd number of threads. Atwater Bronson, the unit is 6 threads long. In Huck lace, the unit is 10 threads long for 5 thread floats in either one of those. Because in Huck lace, we work in half units. And we get used to thinking of this as a block and this as a block. But it's really those two together that are the unit. So when we expand it to, so the standard threading for Huck lace is 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, which has kind of become the standard because it lays plain weave being odds versus evens for your plain weave picks. which more people got along with than doing it the other way. So Madeline kind of changed it and said, let's do this. And that makes a lot more people happy. But the unit, if you notice, is 23232 and then 14141. So what's the unit for the next block up on the next shaft on the fives? Because I did something with 4 was an odd shaft, I want to do something with an even shaft. So I can thread 25252. I can thread 23232. I can thread 27272. I can thread 2152152. But it has to be odd after an even. And so those two together make a unit. Now here she changed it to 2s and actually put a thread to stop them in between. Oh, she did it okay. So, yeah. So we get a little bit of plain weave in here because where I repeated the block, she made it Swedish lace.
Yeah.
This must be the Swedish lace draft. This is the hook. Now it makes better sense. So, and Swedish lace is a combination of hook when you change blocks and Atwater Bronson when you repeat a block. So it uses the one thread or a stopper. In this Swedish here, we repeated the block. We did 141412. And then she put in 141412. And in between those, she used that 2 to make a float there. And then when she got to this one, where she was going from 141414 to 25252, notice there's no thread in between them. There's no 2 after it. And so this is like Huck, and this is like Atwater Bronson. So if you're doing the COE, and it asks you to do Swedish lace, you have to do both things, or it's not Swedish lace. You have to both repeat a block, a pattern, and change blocks. So here's 3 changes in a row. So that's really where we're going today. Basically, that's what we're doing now. So block substitution, and let's come back to this one, but I said I don't trust it. So I'm going to open it again. And it's a 3-shaft profile. And I'll put this in the file for today. So if you bring up this 3-shaft profile,
3 block.
and in all of these programs, you could save it as a WIF file. So, you can, although for any particular program, that doesn't give you all of the information. So I usually save it both ways. I say this is a DTX, which is the FiberWorks suffix, and it's a WIF file. And if you're working on the Macs, they don't use the suffixes, but hopefully you can tell the difference. One of the things that I wanted to tell you is that some of what happens on my screen may not be what happens on your screen with the same program. One of the things I do with each of my programs is I go to preferences. It's usually under file or edit or somewhere near the beginning. And I pick my preferences that I like. So I tell it when it opens a new weaving, I want it to open it with 8 shafts and 12 treadles. Because one of my 8-shaft looms has 12 treadles. So I start with that. I want it to come up in interlacement mode. I could check some others like normal cloth or rep weave. Nah, come up as an interlacement. I want the initial color to be the Lunatic Fringes palette that FiberWorks did. I want it to be a simple tie-up. In other words, if I want to use multiple treadles, I'll tell it I want to. And I want a rising shed loom. If I click on sinking shed, then it becomes a sinking shed loom. And I've got startup in color view and startup at magnification 12. In print settings, I can tell it some things. And the miscellaneous is where it might misbehave and not do what you think yours says. I use the USA, Canada, UK keyboard. I like to see all the recent files I've used. So I put 16, which is the maximum I could do at the time. And then I tell it to reopen the most recent file I've used, because why not? And then this is what really messes it up for my mouse. Left double clicks erases and right click pops up menus. That's not terribly useful to me. I like right click erases. And I'd have to shift right click if I want to pop up a menu, but I just use the mouse. So I'll erase things with a right click, where you may not be able to do that in your Fiberworks demo because you didn't set up the preferences the way I did. And that's true of all the programs. I'll set them up a little different, but I'll set them up to be what I want. And you should set them up to be what you want if there's a preferences key. So do it to make yourself happy. So now we'll say okay, because I like those. Now let's go to block substitution, which is under tools. And she has so many of them in here in the silver version that she put them in a nested menus. So if I come to the lace weaves, I can open that and there's Atwater Bronson, Bronson spot, Huck blocks, lace effect, Huck blocks, block spots, Huck lace effect variant, Huck spots, and Swedish lace. So which one of those do I want? I don't know, you have to try them and see. Unfortunately, there's no better answer than that.
That's for your block substitution when you're first using it. Yes?
Right. So if I wanted to do one, supposing I took Huck block spots. I don't know what that does. What did you do with? And then I have some choices. It says it would take 8 shafts and 8 treadles to do that. Okay, that's okay. Threading, treadling, use colors, a normal tie-up. I don't want the skeleton tie-up. I don't want the lift in, and I do want you to put in a tie-up. So then I can go apply. And here it is, and I can make it bigger or smaller while I'm looking at the preview to see if I got what I wanted. Okay, that looks all right. So then I'll say, okay. And then I might want to blow it up so I can see what it really did. So what she did is for each block, she took it as if the others weave plain weave, the other half of the Huck block weaves plain weave. Because we had 1 here, and so we get this group of 4. So that may or may not be what you want. So this one has a lot of plain weave in it. So you can go through Ingrid's choices and see what you like. And Ingrid is a good person to learn structure from. And you can learn a lot about structure by just using block substitution in any of the programs. Are any of you having trouble substituting blocks?
The biggest thing I bump into on the Fiberworks menu is there are so many choices.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to dig through and figure out what's what.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, you get to know which ones you want to weave. So then you quit substituting the others. But it's really useful to not have those 68 choices just all listed.
Well, yeah, the nesting of the things does make sense. It's also handy having the statement right at the top when you click on it, telling you how many shafts and treadles you need, because there are times when you look at something you really like, but you can't possibly weave it. So knowing what it is before you even go further is also helpful.
That's right. And sometimes you can pick a different choice in that area, because this one took 8 shafts instead of 5. And the other substitution only took 5 shafts. So, and Atwater Bronson lace and the Bronson laces were often woven with a fake fifth shaft on 4-shaft looms. You can just float those wefts because it's only 2 of them. And then you either go over them or under them when you throw the shuttle. And so that's why a lot of times we see 5-shaft drafts done on 4-shaft looms from some of the historic times. So you might be able to do Christmas trees. How many of you know about Heddle Craft Magazine?
I'm aware of it.
Yes.
She did an issue on the lace weaves that's really good and shows you what they look like if you use colored warp and colored weft. Traditionally, laces were woven with the same color warp and weft, or very close colors warp and weft, kind of a white on white damask type weave structure, so that the holes in it were the attraction. But you can do anything you want. I've got my color palette underneath you guys, but what if I pick yellow and purple are complementary colors? Let's see, what if we go over here and see yellow? But since it's all warp floats, we don't see much. What if I go tools, change, or treadling? No, tie up is where I change face. So then I see warp floats. They're white over here where it's yellow, where it's not, where it's white warp, and yellow over here where it's yellow warp. So you can learn a lot about how to put in structures and how they work and what to call something. Perhaps some names have changed since Ingrid did the program. And she's added some structures since the DOS version of the program. So those were the 2 I pulled up. We could see how Scott does them. File, open. I can go get that same the 3-block profile. Yep. So over here is the profile. Let's make it not go all the way over, because in my screen, that puts me into the people. And we should be able to make this bigger by going, how do I make it bigger?
You could scroll up.
Yeah, if you use the scroll wheel on the mouse, is the fastest.
Okay, come on, scroll. Doesn't like my mouse today. Maybe I,
Okay. So then if you look at the top bar, there are buttons at the top on your instructions. If you keep go over to that next one
to the right.
next to the right, move one more over. That one.
That makes it bigger.
I thought I scrolled it before. Okay, there we have a nice looking little draft. And let's see, block substitution will be somewhere.
How did you get the word?
I'm sorry, what?
How did you get the numbers?
This is in Quick Draw.
Oh, right.
And this is a Windows program that's free because Scott does it. Liz and Scott here. Scott is the programmer.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
When it gets large enough to the numbers will fit in the box, they automatically appear.
Yes. Which is
Beautiful.
the same thing most of the ones that do numbers do.
Thanks.
Because after a while they can't, I mean, if it gets so small, they can't put the number in it.
About halfway down is new block substitution.
Yeah, it starts with new block substitution. Halfway
Thank
down.
you.
Okay, so laces.
Uh,
We have Bronson, Huck, 5-thread float, 7-thread float, spot Bronson.
and the mouse will tell you how many shafts and treadles it takes on each option.
Yeah, as you put the mouse over that, say the Huck lace, it shows in the next thing how many.
Well, this is how long the float is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if I pick the 5-thread float, then it'll tell me how many shafts I take. Well, I just set it on 8.
Yeah.
Should have only taken 5 though, but it did. Oh, it did a double lace unit. It did the unit.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. See, that's what you have to learn for each of the programs.
Yeah. And then you can shrink it again to see the larger picture.
Yeah. I'm sure that's my mouse. And you can get rid of this if you want. Hide. And then you can just see your draft. So it's the same thing that we saw in one of the other block substitutions. The nice thing about computers, then, if the programmer does it right, it works.
Yeah.
Every single time, it makes no errors. When I met Sue, who does Pixel Loop, she was just developing it. And we were at a conference and she says, well, I could put numbers in, but what do I do when it gets to 11 and 22? Those are really big compared to the single digits. And I said, use 1 to 0 and then use 1 to 0 for the next 10. You can tell the difference whether it's on 1 or 11 or 21 or 31. So that's what you did.
The problem was all of those stuff that use the number pad on the right-hand side. Never thought of that.
Yeah. And then when you use the keyboard, if you have a keyboard with the number row, you just use the alphabet underneath it, and that makes it easy to visual. So most programmers are doing that now, but not all.
Judy, if you go back to the view and ask for the modify block substitution, go back to the view on the top left.
New
down to
blocks,
modify.
modify blocks.
Yeah. Hit the thumbnails on the top right-hand corner,
Thumbnail top, right? I can't.
just below tab.
So now I can
Yeah,
tell it.
Right,
just
right
above your mouse is the thumbnails button. To your
No.
right.
right
Yeah,
there.
click that one.
Aha. I see.
Oh crap!
What?
I think it's thinking. There it is.
There we are.
Wow. Look at all
What that
those.
is, what that shows you is that block pattern in all the various substitution options, so you can tell what the difference is.
Oh, that's fabulous.
If you hold a mouse, move the mouse over one of those, it'll tell you what it is and how many shafts and treadles it takes.
7-thread damask. Woo. 21 shafts and 21 treadles.
I mean, my limit was 32 shafts. If it's more than that, it'll show it with a red X across it.
A lot of people
But
have.
that's an
40.
easy way to figure out what you can do.
There are a lot of 40 shaft looms wandering around in complex weavers.
Not around here, they're not.
There are in complex weavers.
I had to draw a line someplace, and yeah, 32 is a nice long integer.
32 is a power of 2. It takes a digit to program it, 0 or 1. Yes, Sally Breckenridge, who does Weave It Pro.
Yeah.
When she first developed the program, I don't know if hers was in DOS or came in Windows. Early in Windows, if it wasn't in DOS. She picked 32 as the maximum number of shafts because the most they were selling at that time, I think, was 16. So when they started going to 40, she had to rewrite the program with the new number.
Oh, yeah.
And that means rewriting the whole program because that's a basic thing you choose. So she had to redo her whole program. So it's challenging for programmers to keep up with things.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time I do block substitution. I tend to do it from this view so I can see what things look like.
Yep. And if you have 40 shafts, you can substitute a couple more blocks on your own anyway. You kind of know what they're going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
That's very nice. So you can see the 3 different ways they did laces.
In the top left-hand corner is the profile draft.
Yeah, I see that. And I messed up my treadling, so yeah, okay. Okay, sounds good. And then we can look at it for good. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, we don't want to say changes to that. Okay, so do you think that you know enough now about what laces do and what substituting into a pattern or design into a profile draft for a lace draft will do for you? Do you have any questions about those?
Not a question about those, Judy. What was the name of the program you just used? Yes,
Quick
please.
Draw.
Thank you.
and it's Windows only
Yep.
at this point in time. Scott's working on Mac.
Yeah.
That
it's,
works for me.
Among
Yeah.
other things.
It's found at quickdrawweaving.com.
Quick Draw
Lovely.
Weaving. Quick Draw Weaving. And he has
Thank you.
lots of YouTube videos to show you how it works.
Terrific. Thank you.
And it's free. The price is perfect. We play perfect information games at our house. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. One of the things that we get asked a lot online are the 8-shaft patterns, because she uses profile drafts. So I thought what we'd do next time is look at any problems anybody was having in chapters 19, 20, and 21, which are the spot weaves, the Atwater Bronson and the Huck and Swedish. So that's what I'm going to do, is go through those. So what I'm going to ask people is, if you're having problems substituting into those or understanding how that draft is written, tell me which ones and I'll try and have them ready to go so that I know what the problems are with those drafts. Okay, since you're here, do you have any questions for me on anything?
Judy, when I've been playing around, rather than try and design the pattern by the threading and treadling, I tend to go to like a fabric analysis screen and basically just enter the blocks that I'm looking for. When you're doing that in some of the other softwares, I'm not sure how well it saves the drawing pad you're playing with. What I mean?
So if you're playing like in Fiberworks on the sketch pad,
Yeah.
You can save your sketch pad before you do fabric analysis.
Well, it's like last time we did the Huck design, and you were pixeling on the main screen. What I was playing with is doing Huck design by working JSOF the scratch pad, so you can basically start with basically a checkerboard of the plane weave pattern, and then change it on the fabric analysis. So you
Or
basically
on the
create any
grid.
pattern you want to.
Well, it wouldn't do what I want to do, because say I want to draw a Christmas tree. And I'm looking at a 6-block profile because I want to do them on my 8-shaft loom in summer and winter. So I might draw my Christmas tree and I put in 3 to 8, down to 3, and up to 8 again as my point draw, so that I've got bilateral symmetry. And so then when I draw in the drawdown, if I click on something on a 4 shaft, it fills in all of the 4 shafts. However, I fill in that one column.
Well, yeah, I hear
Yeah.
what you're saying.
So that's faster for me for some design work.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on how you're designing.
Yes. Because I may not do that. I may start with just drawing trees on the, but I probably saw on that one, if I'm doing bilateral symmetry, I want to do it in the drawdown.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the other piece for Scott's graphic entry, is you can draw a symmetry line and it will automatically put it on either side of the line for you.
That's really nice. Yeah. It's like, yeah. And I mean, because if I'm just doing, I mean, some things are easier to do block substitution than ever to draw.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there are lots of things I would never do draw in the drawdown. The other thing that I use drawdowns for is too long a float. The float's too long and you have to go in and change it. What are the ways you can change it without messing up the rest of your draft? And that's easiest to do in the drawdown.
That might, I don't know whether that'd be worth talking about, you know, how the various software shows you what the float lengths and float locations are.
Yeah, they all have some pretty good ways. And they're all different, a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that question of float length is one that feeds quickly into structure when you're doing anything.
Yes. And sometimes you don't care about the floats on the back of the fabric. because you're never going to see the back in the finished item. Sometimes you do.
Mhm.
So some programs will let you check for floats on the warp on the face and then on the back. Some will only let you check for floats anywhere in the draft.
The other thing I've seen a difference at times is how they handle floats between at the end, at the side, like the left and the right side, or if you have repeat blocks, the float will go across blocks, from the left side to the right. It may or may not be seen depending upon the software.
Yeah. So yeah, all of those are, I think of all of the ones that are for sale. I haven't played a lot with Tumbleweed, but all of the ones that are currently for sale have really good algorithms and do what they do correctly. I haven't found any real errors in them anymore. The browse feature, and I think that's still available in Windows. When it first came out, then a lot of people switched to letting you do a browse so you could look, and then they put in, so when you saved your file, it also saved a ping or a TIFF file. I think it was a TIFF back then of your weaving, so you could have a picture of the weaving, how many shafts and how many treadles, whatever information they wanted to.
I think iWeave has that function to provide that kind of directory function.
Yeah, a lot of them do. It's just not something you have to look for to try anymore. iWeave does it. I think Pixelloon does it. I think WeavePoint does it.
From what I can tell, most of the weavers are still Mac based, at least more Mac comfortable.
I don't know about that.
I think in the last, about 5 years, since Mac programs have become more common, that is Fiberworks and Pixelloon and Weave It Pro, all produce a Mac program.
Have you spent much time on Tempo Weave in terms of what its capabilities are and that kind of stuff?
I haven't spent a lot of time, no.
And in looking at the chapters in the Strickler book, you talked about the profile drafts. Do you want us to look in particular at any one of them? There are several. Many of them are just a point,
Ready.
but there are others, and I just wondered if you wanted us to look at anything in particular.
We just had a lot of questions in the Strickler group about how to do profiles.
Okay.
I'm not sure there are as many for lace as there are for some of the others that use a lot of treadles.
Well, there seems to be one that is real obvious at the very beginning of the chapter on Atwater Bronson. And then in many of the Huck laces, it just seems to be a point.
Yeah.
And so I was just curious, but there's some really interesting ones in what Spot Bronson has a number of very elaborate profile drafts.
Yeah. So it mostly, that was one of the things I said when we started doing Zoom meetings, is that we'll look at the Strickler book for all those who are having problems.
Okay.
So that was why I wanted to include the Strickler book. Then we'll have Thanksgiving, and then we need to go to a new structure. Do you have any requests? You get to make them.
You're going to talk about network weaving and network design at some point?
Yeah, we'll get to networks, yeah. So yeah, we just need to do it a little slow, but
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I could jump in and do networks. We could do it next.
Well, less than I think about recording and making the videos available. People can get to them when they need to.
Well, and they can always ask the questions on the group too. Thank you so much for coming and asking questions and being here.
Thank you.